Welcome on Gam channel. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment to get more videos. Your opinions are so important. Tell us what you learned, what we forgot, what you want in the next video. So today is about Algeria history. Generally, how France colonized Algeria and the atrocities committed by the French colonialists during the colonial era. Algerians still remember French colonial era crimes. Every year, voices raised in Algeria demanding France to acknowledge and apologize for its colonial past in the North African country. Algerians accuse Paris of obliterating the Algerian identity, looting, torture, murder, and carrying out nuclear tests during colonial rule. France occupied Algeria for 132 years, from July 5, 1830 until July 5, 1962, when the country declared its independence from colonial rule. During the course of the struggle for independence, over 1.5 million Algerians were killed, while hundreds of thousands more were injured, went missing, or were forced from their homes. France must acknowledge its genocide crimes against Algerians since 1830. All Algerian historian Mohamed Al-Amin told Anadolu Agency. During the protest, demonstrators called for breaking with French at cultural and political levels and cancelling the use of the French language in state institutions, schools, and universities. Protesters also blamed Paris for the current political and economic situation in Algeria. Algerians accused France of erasing the Algerian identity and launching war against mosques and religious schools. In 1836, France opened the first Catholic missionary school in Algeria. Paris also enacted discriminatory laws against Algerians in a move that allowed colonizers to usurp their lands. According to French officials, the colonial authorities carried out 17 nuclear experiments in the Algerian desert in the period between 1960 and 1966. Algerian historians, however, put the number at 57. On 13 February 1960, France conducted its first nuclear test named Blue Desert Rat in the Sahara Desert southwest of Algeria. The French nuclear experiments have caused the death of around 42,000 Algerians and thousands injured due to nuclear radioactivity, in addition to the extensive damage against the environment. The colonialist French authorities have committed abuses and torture against Algerian civilians, according to Algerian historians and victims. Electric shocks and the use of water wells as prisons were among the methods used by the colonialist authorities against prisoners in Algeria. The Algerian archive is another thorny issue between the two countries, with Algerians demanding France to return thousands of artifacts, books, and maps, a demand rejected by Paris. Algeria, officially the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria, is a country in North Africa. Algeria is bordered to the northeast by Tunisia, to the east by Libya, to the southeast by Niger, to the southwest by Mali, Mauritania, and Western Sahara, to the west by Morocco, and to the north by the Mediterranean Sea. It is considered part of the Maghreb region of North Africa. It has a semi-arid geography, with most of the population living in the farther north and Sahara dominating the geography of the south. Algeria covers an area of 2,381,741 square kilometers, making it the world's 10th largest nation by area and the largest nation in Africa, being more than 200 times as large as the smallest country in the continent, the Gambia. With a population of 44 million, Algeria is the 9th most populous country in Africa and the 32nd most populous country in the world. The capital and the largest city is Algiers, located in the far north of the Mediterranean coast. French Algeria, and officially Algérie Française, also known as the colonial Algeria, was the period of French colonization of Algeria. French rule in the region began in 1830 was the invasion of Algiers and lasted until the end of the Algerian War of Independence in 1862. While the administration of Algeria changed significantly over the 132 years of French rule, the Mediterranean coastal region of Algeria, housing the vast majority of its population, was an integral part of France from 1848 until its independence. As one of France's longest held overseas territories, Algeria became a destination for hundreds of thousands of European immigrants known as colons and later as pieds noirs. However, the indigenous Muslim population remained the majority of the territory's population throughout its history. It is estimated that the native of Algerian population fell by up to one-third between 1830 and 1875 due to warfare, disease, and starvation. Gradually, dissatisfaction among the Muslim population due to their lack of political and economic freedom fueled calls for greater political autonomy and eventually independence from France. Tensions between the two groups came to a head in 1954 when the first violent events began of what was later called the Algerian War, characterized by guerrilla warfare and crimes against humanity, used by the French in order to stop the revolt. The war ended in 1962 when Algeria gained independence following the Evian Agreements in March 1962. French atrocities against the Algerian indigenous population. According to Ben Kiernan, colonization and genocidal massacres proceeded in tandem within the first 3 decades, from 1830 up to 1860, of French conquest. Between 500,000 and 1 million Algerians out of total of 3 million were killed due to war, massacres, disease, and famine. Atrocities committed by the French during the Algerian War during the 1950s against Algerians include deliberate bombing and killing of unarmed civilians, rape, torture, execution through death, flight, or burial alive, theft, and pillaging. Up to 2 million Algerian civilians were also deported in internment camps. During the pacification of Algeria from 1835 up to 1903, French forces engaged in a scorched earth policy against the Algerian population. Colonel Lucien de Montagnac stated that the purpose of the pacification was to destroy everything that will not crawl beneath our feet like dogs. The scorched earth policy decided by the Governor General Thomas Lobert Bijou had devastating effects on the socio-economic and food balances of the country. We fire little gun shoots, we burn all villages, all huts, the enemy flees across taking his flow. According to Olivier Lecourt Grand-Maison, the colonization of Algeria led to the extermination of a third of the population from multiple causes: massacre, deportations, famine, or epidemics that were all interrelated. Returning from an investigation trip to Algeria, Tocqueville wrote that we make our war much more barbaric than the Arabs themselves. It is for their part of the civilization is situated. French forces deported and banished entire Algerian tribes. The Moorish families of Tlemcen were exiled to the Orient, and others were immigrated elsewhere. The tribes that were considered too troublesome were banned, and some took refuge in Tunisia, Morocco, and Syria, or were deported to New Caledonia or Guyana. Also engaged in wholesale massacre of entire tribes. All 500 men, women, and children of the El Oufia tribe were killed in one night, while all 500 to 700 members of the Ouel Ria tribe were killed by suffocation in a cave. The siege of Lagua is referred by the Algerians as the Year of the Kalia, Arabic for emptiness, which is commonly known to the inhabitants of Lagua as the year that the city was emptied of its population. It is also commonly known as the Year of the Haitian Sacks, referring to the way the captured surviving men and boys were put alive in the Haitian sacks and thrown into dug-up trenches. From 8 May to June 26, 1944, the French carried out the Sétif and Guelma massacre, in which between 6,000 and 80,000 Algerian Muslims were killed. This initial outbreak occurred during a parade of about 5,000 people of the Muslim Algerian population of Steve to celebrate the surrender of Nazi Germany in World War II. It ended in clashes between the marchers and the local French gendarmerie when the latter tried to seize banners attacking Colonial Road. After 5 days, the French colonial military and police suppressed the rebellion and then carried out a series of reprisals against Muslim civilians. The army carried out summary executions of Muslim rural communities. Less accessible villages were bombed by French aircraft and cruiser Duguay Khoun, standing off the coast of the Gulf of Bougie, shelled Kerata. Vigilants lynched prisoners taken from local jails or randomly shot Muslims not wearing white armbands, as instructed by the army out of hand. It is certain that the great majority of Muslim victims had been implicated in the original outbreak. The dead bodies in Guelma were buried in mass graves, but they were later dug up and buried in Elopolis. During the Algerian War from 1954 up to 1962, the French used deliberate illegal methods against the Algerians, including beatings, torture by electroshock, waterboarding, bans, and rape. Prisoners were also locked up without food in small cells, buried alive, and thrown from helicopters to their death or into the sea with concrete on their feet. Claude Bourdet had denounced these acts on 6 December 1951 in the magazine L'Observateur, erotically asking, "Is there a Gestapo in Algeria?" Half in his seminal work on the subject argued such tactics sat uncomfortably with France's revolutionary history and brought unbearable comparison with Nazi Germany. The French National Psych would not tolerate any parallels between their experiences of occupation and their colonial mastery of Algeria. General Paul Osiris admitted in 2000 that the systematic torture techniques were used during the war and justified it. He also recognized the assassination of lawyer Al Boumdjel and the head of the FLN in Algeria, Larbi Ben Meid, which had been disguised as suicide. Bridget, who called FLN activists savages, claimed torture was a necessary evil. To the contrary, General Jacques Massou denounced it, following Osiris's revelations, and before his death pronounced himself in favor of an official condemnation of the use of torture during the war. In June 2000, Bridget declared that he was based in Sidi Ferrouch, a torture center where Algerians were murdered. Bridget qualified Louiset's revelations published in the Le Monde newspapers on June 20, 2000 as lies. An ALN activist, Louiset, had been tortured by General Massou. However, since General Massou's revelation, Bridget also recognized that Larbi Meid was assassinated and that his death was disguised as suicide. In 2018, France officially admitted that torture was a systematic and brutal. Postcolonial relations. Relations between postcolonial Algeria and France has remained close throughout the years, although sometimes difficult. In 1962, the Evian-Accords Peace Treaty provided land in the Sahara for the French army, which it had used to carry out the first nuclear tests. Many European settlers living in Algeria and the Algerian Jews, who contrary to Algerian Muslims had been granted French citizenship by the Crimea Decrees, at the end of the 19th century, were expelled to France, where they formed a new community. On the other hand, the issue of the Harkis, the Muslims who fought on the French side during the war, still remained unresolved. Large numbers of Harkis were killed in 1962 during the immediate aftermath of the Algerian War, while those who escaped with their families to France have tended to remain an unassimilated refugee community. The present Algerian government continues to refuse to allow Harkis and their descendants to return to Algeria. On the 23rd February 2005, the French law on colonialism was an act passed by the Union of Popular Movement, conservative majority, which imposed on high school teachers to teach the positive values of colonialism to their students, in particular in North Africa. The law created a public uproar and opposition from the whole of the left wing, and was finally repealed by President Jacques Chirac at the beginning of 2006 after accusations of historical revisionism from various teachers and historians. In 2017, President Emmanuel Macron described France's colonization of Algeria as a crime against humanity. He also said it's truly barbarous and is part of the past that we need to confront by apologizing to those against whom we committed these acts. In July 2020, the remains of 24 Algerian resistance fighters and leaders who were decapitated by the French colonial forces in the 19th century and whose skulls were taken to Paris as war trophies and held in the Musée de l'Homme in Paris, were repatriated to Algeria and buried at El Alia Cemetery. In January 2021, Macron stated there would be no repentance nor apologies for the French colonization of Algeria, colonial abuses, or French involvement during the Algerian Independence War. Instead, efforts would be devoted toward reconciliation. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe, like, share and comment if you haven't yet, of course. Your opinions are so important to us. Put them in the comment section and don't forget to let us know what you would like in the next video. Thank you.